happening with the Aussie housing market, I'm joined by Bill Nikolazakis from Nico Property. Good evening, Bill.
Hi, Carolyn. How are you?
So what can we expect from the market for 2015, and what are the ideal types of residential property investments we should be looking at?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. 2015, we believe, is going to be a lot like 2014, really. The only thing we see to change maybe slightly is a cooling in Sydney and Melbourne off the highs that it showed in 2014. And we've already seen that in the November data that came out, with investors reducing by 2.2%, investment loans reducing by 2.2% in that month. So we think that'll continue throughout the year. We still think it's a decent market to buy in as long as you've got a medium to long-term outlook in the property market. But we see that the comments by the Reserve Bank Governor late last year, along with the talk of the macro prudential controls, has really cooled it down just slightly, and I think that'll continue for the rest of the year.
So why will low to medium density in those middle ring suburbs be the strongest performer? That's what we're hearing.
Yeah, look, we definitely believe that. So if you're buying residential property in Australia at the moment, all the data points to medium and low density type living close to transport links and close to the CBD as being the best performers, and we've certainly seen that in our own business. The reason for that is because the demographics in Australia are changing. In the last census data that came out, we saw a 2.6 people per household in Australia, down from over 4 people per household just 10 years ago. So we're seeing a lot less people live in each household. So the types of property that they need are very different to what it was in the past. So we're seeing people getting married later, having kids later, divorce rates are higher, and also people living a lot longer. The types of dwellings that they want compared to the 4-bedroom home and a quarter acre is very, very different to what a family, for instance, may want.
So where shouldn't people be buying then?
Look, we're solidly of the belief that in Melbourne and Sydney we'd keep away from the CBDs and even some of the fringe suburbs around the CBD that have had an oversupply problem. Places like South Bank in Melbourne, parts of South Yarra, these areas have had quite a big oversupply of property. And although the long-term outlook in those sort of blue chip type suburbs is going to be strong, certainly for the next 10 years or so, we don't see a lot of growth happening in those areas. In terms of the CBDs, again, CBDs, we need to build buildings in the CBD. So it's great that people are buying them because that's the way cities are built and the most livable way to build a city. And I think that in the next 20 years or so, we're going to see a lot of people living closer to their workplaces, and obviously the major workplaces are in the CBD. So although, again, we see those being potentially the high rise in the CBD, that is being potentially a good type of property for the long term, you know, we still want to see our clients get some growth in the next 15 to 20 years, and we just don't see solid growth happening in those areas.
And what macro-prudential controls are currently being considered?
Well, the macro-prudential controls are the main one that they're talking about, that we hear, I guess, through the news outlets. Is the Reserve Bank Governor said that they will try to limit interest-only loans, which obviously are targeted at investors, to curb the investor buying, which is the big driver, obviously, of the market in 2014. So that was the main one. And then there's also been the perennial talk that government may take back negative gearing or take that out of the market, even to the point where they're saying that it may be they'll just allow it for new property to keep the construction sector afloat. So they're probably the two main areas that we see that government or the Reserve Bank could get involved. But I'd say that that's not going to happen in the next year or two unless we see some really, really strong growth, even higher than 2014 moving forward. So
finally, Bill, where do you perceive the hotspots to be?
Look, we're Melbourne specialists at Nico Property, so I'll answer that as well as I can with the area that we know intimately. For Melbourne in particular, and I'm sure the same goes for Sydney, they've got the metropolitan strategy in Sydney that the government put out. In Australia, we've got Plan Melbourne, in Melbourne, we've got Plan Melbourne, and that's a really big part of what we do in the research that we do. And I think if people are going to be buying in Melbourne, they should be reading that document and getting to know the areas where the infrastructure spend is going to be and where they're trying to make people live or trying to encourage people to live. In Melbourne, the southeast we think will be the fastest growing in 2015 and probably 16 as well. But it's more the middle ring suburbs of the southeast. And then in the north and west, we also see some pretty good opportunities, but a bit closer to the city, sort of in the inner city, west and northern areas.
Thanks very much for your time, Bill.
Thank you very much.